Oh, you want me to talk again? Test audio. والذين يكنزون الذهب والفضة ولا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to you all. This is Nabil Khan with Penny Appeal Canada, providing you a workshop on zakat. Inshallah, through this workshop we're going to cover the fundamentals of zakat and many aspects that will help all of you ensure that you are calculating your zakat correctly and paying it correctly. Inshallah ta'ala, I have been working with Penny Appeal Canada for the last year or so, reviewing contracts, rectifying affairs, advising, teaching, and hopefully inshallah today educating the public on the importance of zakat. So here inshallah ta'ala we'll talk about some spiritual aspects of zakat. We will talk about the calculation, some things to look for, some misconceptions, and hopefully we will get the gist of zakat enough for each and every one of us to practice in our own lives, inshallah ta'ala. So without further ado, on the concept of zakat, the first and most important thing that is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَرِيضَةً مِّنَ اللَّهِ. Zakat is a obligation from Allah Almighty. فَرِيضَةً مِّنَ اللَّهِ, meaning that it is a religious obligation and it is a command that we are legally responsible to fulfill. The concept of fard, an obligation or a prescribed action in Islam, the essential part of that means ibra'u dhimma. Prior to everything else, the first goal of completing a fard is to remove the responsibility upon us. Ibra'u dhimma. Meaning, like in salah, like in fasting in the month of Ramadan, like in zakat, like in hajj, the first thing we want to do is complete the task in such a way that we are not held accountable for not completing it. Like when you pray Fajr, Salatul Fajr, you're praying Salatul Fajr with the first goal so that you are not held accountable for not praying Salatul Fajr. Like this, here we're talking about zakat. The first thing we want to understand is the goal is to complete the obligation in such a manner that when it is completed, we inshallah ta'ala are not held accountable for not paying our zakat. Second, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has uniquely made zakat an obligation which also, if it is not done correctly, harms other people. When you look at the other pillars of Islam, you find whether it be salah, whether it be saum, whether it be hajj, you find that those actions, if they are not conducted, if they are not completed, the person has only wronged themselves. they have not prayed and then they have missed out an obligation that benefits them, and they will be held accountable. But in the case of zakat, when a person does not fulfill the obligation of zakat, they have directly, not indirectly, they have directly abused people that are in need. So we need to understand that the importance of zakat is such that if the person does not, the believer does not pay zakat, they're not only harming themselves in this dunya and this akhirah, they are also harming the believers. So it is a communal requirement, it is a service to mankind to pay zakat. The one who does not pay zakat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to this in the Quran as kanz. Kanz meaning hoarding wealth. Allah says in the Quran, وَالَّذِينَ يَكْنِزُونَ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَها فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. Those people who hoard gold and silver and they do not spend it in the path of God, فَبَشِّرْهُمْ, give them glad tidings of a painful punishment. يوم يحمى عليها في نار جهنم فتكوى بها جباههم وجنوبهم وظهورهم هذا ما كنزتم لأنفسكم فذوقوا ما كنتم تكنزون. Allah will say to them on the day of Qiyamah when they are brought into the hellfire, يوم يحمى عليها, the uniqueness that the person who does not pay the zakat on gold and silver is that that gold and silver will be brought and used to punish them. يحمى عليها في نار جهنم, it will be ignited in fire, and the person will be branded with it on their foreheads and their backs and their sides and their body. And as they are branded with the wealth that they did not pay zakat on, it will also be told to them, هذا ما كنزتم, this is what you wanted to hoard, this is what you did not want to pay in zakat, فذوقوا ما كنتم تكنزون, now taste the thing that you hoarded. It's a very unique teaching. What does it tell us? Number one, that if we are not paying zakat, we are punished with it. Second is that the uniqueness of the punishment is that that same wealth that you try to hoard will be used against you. That is the means of your punishment. Third is the punishment will affect your physical body. يُحْمَى عَلَيْهَا فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمْ, you will be branded with it physically. Third is that you will be told that you did this to yourself. هَذَا مَا كَنَزْتُمْ لِأَنفُسِكُمْ, you hoarded this money for your own benefit, and now you will have reaped the same harm for yourself. فَذُوقُوا, and you will be told, taste it. Taste it meaning it will be a recurring sadness and grief that you have that you did not pay your zakat. In a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, like mentioned by Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man ataahu Allahu malan falam yuaddi zakatah," the person who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him wealth and they do not pay the zakat, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have for that person a snake on the day of Qiyamah. يُطَوَّقَهُ, it will be wrapped around him on the day of Qiyamah and it will constantly bite him. And then Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that that snake will say to the person, "Ana maluk, ana kanzuk," I was your money, I was the wealth that you hoarded. Then Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam read an ayah of the Quran, وَلَا يَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ يَبْخَلُونَ بِمَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ هُوَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ بَلْ هُوَ شَرٌّ لَهُمْ سَيُطَوَّقُونَ مَا بَخِلُوا بِهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that those people who are stingy in that which Allah has granted them of His virtue, and they do not essentially pay its zakat, they should not think that they have saved something in benefit of themselves. خَيْرًا لَهُمْ بَلْ هُوَ شَرٌّ لَهُمْ. Actually, in fact, this is actually destructive for them. يُطَوَّقُونَ مَا بَخِلُوا بِهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, they will be wrapped around with this on the day of Qiyamah. In another narration, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, in the same aspect, he speaks about how the person, especially in the past when they would pay zakat on primarily cows, camels, sheep, etc. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam said that sheep, that camel, those animals, they will have horns on the day of Qiyamah and they will constantly stab the person in rotation. Yani if you have 100 camels or you have 100 sheep, 100 goat, you have to pay a certain amount of that in zakat. When you do not, those animals that you did not pay in zakat, they will be brought on Qiyamah to specifically punish you constantly and an ever-going punishment. So remember that zakat, if not paid, is a destruction of your wealth. It is not protecting your wealth. It is not keeping your wealth in your benefit. And sometimes we struggle with this bukhl, this stinginess, that we think that when we choose not to pay our zakat, we are somehow benefiting ourselves. We are somehow using that money to buy things, for a rainy day, to enjoy. But the reality is that will only destroy both the barakah, the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our dunya, and eventually we will be punished with this in the akhirah. Zakat itself always brings barakah. It always brings blessings. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam in the authentic hadith in many narrations said, "Ma naqasa malun min sadaqah." Wealth can never be depleted by sadaqah alone. You will find that sadaqah and zakat, when it is paid, it is putting barakah in your entire life. Yani one of the reasons that we spend money is because we need something. When you need something, in many cases, it's because of a thought, something unexpected came up. Whether that be breaking a phone, whether that be a car accident, whether that be any other calamity, small or large. In many cases, if we pay sadaqah, taruddul bala, it will repel these from the beginning. And the reality is that paying our zakat will protect us from not having to spend money on those things that are calamities that we have not planned for. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا أَنفَقْتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَهُوَ يُخْلِفُهُ وَهُوَ خَيْرُ الرَّازِقِينَ. Whatever you spend in God's path, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will replace it. وَهُوَ خَيْرُ الرَّازِقِينَ. And Allah Azza wa Jal is the greatest sustainer. Now inshallah, in reference to the calculation of zakat, we are going to cover a number of things. And hopefully my goal here with you all is to cover certain aspects and then discuss them in brief points so that you can retain the fundamentals. Number one, zakat is different than sadaqah. Zakat is a restricted wealth that needs to be paid. It is a specific obligation and it is not a voluntary act. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this in the Quran, where Allah Azza wa Jalla says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل فريضة من الله والله عليم حكيم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إنما الصدقات, that this is yufidul hasr. It is restricting zakat to these 8 categories. Zakat can only be given to these 8 individuals, 8 types. Number 1, fuqara, the destitute. Number 2, masakin, the needy. The destitute and needy masakin, the fuqara and the masakin, in some cases they overlap, but generally speaking, fuqara are those that are extremely poor and have almost nothing. And the masakin are those that are needy. They may have something but not sufficient to make them wealthy. Those are usually those under the level of nisab. Al-amilin alayha, those in the work of zakat collection and distribution, like in the time of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Al-mu'allafatu qulubuhum, those that were given zakat amongst the non-Muslims, that were given zakat for the purpose of softening their hearts to Islam and bringing them into the fold of Islam, and wealth was used, zakat wealth was used for this objective. Next, fir riqab, in the case of freeing slaves and captives of war, like in the past. Gharimin, to free people of debt, partially or wholly. Fi sabilillah, in the path of God, whether it be through military movement and jihad, or whether it be other means of fi sabilillah. But here we are speaking specifically about that which is well known in the time of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. We're not talking about welfare projects. We're avoiding that. Wabnu sabil, and the stranded traveler, someone who is stuck in their travel to get home, you can give them zakat to assist them. When you give zakat, there are essentially a few key points to remember who you cannot pay zakat to. Number one, anyone who is giving zakat cannot receive zakat. We consider the one giving zakat as ghani, aghniya. They are the wealthy. The wealthy do not receive zakat, nor can they receive zakat. Number two, if someone is capable of earning income, but they choose not to out of laziness or just they want to live in a life of poverty intentionally. In this case, they are not eligible for zakat because they have the ability to be independent. And the third is the disbeliever. The zakat is a restricted wealth only for believers unless we are applying mu'allafatul qulub, which we mentioned, and which are specific cases. So generally speaking, zakat can only be given to Muslimin. Zakat as opposed to charity. Zakat is an obligation. Not only is it an obligation, it can only be given to these 8 categories. It is given by Muslims to Muslims. We give it on a specific date once a year. Specific date once a year. And we are prescribed a certain amount, 2.5% based on the lunar calendar. As for sadaqah, general charity, you can give it at any time. There's no restriction to these 8 categories. And you can give any amount you want and to anyone that you are helping out, inshaAllah ta'ala. So zakat requires, therefore, more understanding. Zakat is a wealth that is given to the recipient with the objective of assisting them, fulfilling the obligation, and also tamlik. We want to give the person the zakat wealth in such a manner that we as the donors, the payers of zakat, have severed our connection to that wealth. It is a tamlik. We are giving them this as they are the new owners of that wealth. Why is this so important? Because the concept of tamlik in transferring ownership is a critical part and component to liberating people financially. When we give the recipient, the beneficiary, the wealth, they are able to have tasarruf, the ability to utilize wealth and actually become independent, which is the goal of zakat. So inshallah ta'ala, these people who are currently mustaqeen, they are the recipients of zakat, can one day be the aghniya, the wealthy paying zakat. The exception to this is when you have charities which are custodians. They work as the wakil. They are the middleman between the donor and the recipient, and they have a clear understanding between both ends to ensure that the recipient is given their zakat and understands that it is zakat and it is in their benefit without any abuse. As well as a complete management of funds and transparency to the donor. In the current world, when we are giving our zakat to any charity, whether it be Penny Appeal or any other charity, we are looking at the charity as a means of providing zakat. It is a vehicle. And we are responsible to ensure that the organizations and charities that we work with are compliant. They are managing the zakat appropriately. And this is why, one of the reasons why I am a part of Penny Appeal Canada, to ensure that the donors have the ability to feel comfort and at peace and rest assured that zakat is being distributed correctly, contracts are in place, transparency is there, and we are an ever-growing standard in this industry. Now going to the calculation of zakat, we have nisab. Nisab, keep this as the threshold. Nisab means the portion of wealth that when we have it, when it is sustained, then we are required to pay zakat. There are two nisabs. The variance is huge. There's the nisab of fidda and the nisab of dhahab, the nisab of silver and gold. It is 85 grams of gold, which is about $18,000 to $19,000, which is quite a large amount. As of February, it fluctuates. Whenever you pay your zakat, you should check the nisab of that day. And you have the nisab of silver, which is 595 grams, which is only about $2,000 to $2,500 Canadian. So you can see here that the nisab of gold and silver, there's about a $15,000 gap difference between the two. In Canada, we suggest that people give zakat according to the nisab of gold, because the nisab of silver being so low, we cannot expect that these people are truly wealthy and have a substantial amount of wealth. So we recommend in Canada to give in the amount of gold, but if you choose to give in silver, if you choose to give in accordance to silver, then it is inshallah no harm. Of course, it is accepted and it is a safer approach. How you need to calculate zakat is that once you have understood the threshold, the nisab that you are applying, you need to know when your wealth reaches that amount. So let's say, for example, on the 1st of Ramadan, which people tend to pay their zakat in the month of Ramadan. In Ramadan, on the 1st of zakat, in the 1st of Ramadan, my accounts, whether it be cash at home, whether it be cash at the bank, whether it be gold, investments, all of that, was $50,000. Now, the moment that it reached over $20,000, which was the nisab of gold, now I have to monitor this for 1 year. 1 year later, I am paying zakat. Now, zakat is obligation upon me 1 year later. So the following Ramadan, first, I have the $50,000. Now I am going to calculate the zakat and I'm going to pay it on the 1st, and every year moving forward, I will pay zakat on the 1st of Ramadan, 2.5% according to the Hijri calendar. So you need to remember your zakat anniversary date. Whatever date you continue with, you will continue with forever. And if you make changes to that, you should ensure that you speak to a scholar to make sure that any zakat missed during that change is made up for. Now, once we have set the threshold, we understand when the threshold kicks in, we are now paying zakat. And we know that once I am obligated to pay zakat, 1 year later I will pay it. Now we are going to look on what we are counting as zakat. This is otherwise known as zakatable assets. Zakatable assets are cash at home, in any currency. All of this is cash. Cash-like assets, gold and silver, whether it be in this form of coins or jewelry or nuggets, all of this gold and silver are zakatable. Debts owed to you, if you had money and you gave it as a credit or a loan to someone to help them, 5,000, 10,000, and you believe that money will be coming back to you, that is still considered your wealth. So you will take that into consideration. So if I gave fulan, if I gave such and such person $5,000 to help them out, and I know that at some point, inshallah, they will pay me, I'm confident about that, then I will pay zakat on that money. Shares and stocks, whether it be through a TFSA, RRSP, RESP, all of these are going to be zakatable. One important point to note, because we have many different instruments that we invest our wealth into, whether it be stocks, RRSPs, RESPs, TFSAs, we want to know that the rule of zakat, that if the investment is growing, it is zakatable. Second is that if we have access to the funds. If we do not have access to the funds, it is restricted. like in the case of many RRSPs. In that case, we will consider this like malud damar. This will be like treasure that is not available to us at the moment, and we will not pay zakat until we have access. This rule of accessibility is important to take into consideration when looking at your various investments. If you are in business, all your inventory that you plan to sell or you keep for future sale and other assets that are business related are all zakatable. You need to take also this into consideration. Properties for sale. In properties, we're only looking to pay zakat on the property with the intent to sell. If you have a property and you are going to sell it and you're putting it on the market, in that case, that property is just like a commodity in your business. Your plan is to sell and make gains, you will pay zakat on its entire value. Now, if you meet the criteria of paying zakat, we need to make sure we have a couple things that we keep in mind. You have to own this wealth. It's not something we talked about, how if I loan money, that money is still considered mine and I'll pay zakat, but the person who I lent the money to, it is not their money. So they will not pay zakat. So you need to own the wealth. Number two is the wealth that we pay zakat on is only on halal wealth. Anything that is haram, tainted funds, there's no zakat on that. Rather, it is an obligation to rid ourselves of that wealth by giving it into charity without seeking any reward and making istighfar. And the other two aspects, we already talked about it. We reached the nisab, we reached the threshold, and then we pay zakat yearly on the anniversary date. It's a simple calculation. With that in mind, the assets, what is zakatable, with the nisab, with the date, with the understanding that we just discussed, you are taking all of your zakatable assets, gathering them together, coming to a total sum, and then you are going to subtract deductibles. Once you deduct what is eligible, you will have a remaining amount. That remaining amount will be your net zakatable assets. On the net zakatable assets, you will pay 2.5% as your zakat. For the sake of simplicity, if you had $100,000 in total zakatable assets, and then you and it is a $10,000 debt, you can deduct $10,000 from your zakatable net worth. If it is a long-term debt, which is anything over the 12 months, in that case, we look that it is most likely amortized if you are making payments. See, if you're not making payments, then you're not deducting anything, because this could be a long-term debt where you're paying it in 5 years later, you'll start the payment in 5 years, which means you will not deduct it today. There's nothing to deduct. You will start deducting in the 5 years. But if you are making payments and it's amortized over 1 year, then you can deduct the entire principal amount of that 1 year. Imagine in the case of a car. If you had a car that is financed and your principal payment is $500 a month, over the year you will pay $6,000. Even though it is amortized over 5 years, only the 1 year of principal payment will be deducted, which is $6,000. So whenever you are calculating your zakat and you have gathered your zakatable assets and now you're looking at your deductions, you need to divide your deductions into two: long term, short term, and then you can appropriately deduct. When you are looking at these debts, you need to remember that the interest, of course haram, can never be deducted. This is not a deductible amount. So if you are paying $100 a month in interest, it is not deductible, it is not applied. Now, looking into stocks, ETFs, mutual funds, RESPs that are invested, all of these have debt and are of two types. They have debt because when you are invested into a company, you are also a shareholder of that company in the case of stocks. So debt, you are assuming the debt with the company. So how it is done is based on the studies of the market. We apply a proxy of 30%. What that means is, whenever we have a long-term stock, which is a stock that we plan to retain and we are not trading for over 1 year, then we consider this long-term. So any investment that we hold and we are not trading within the year, then it is a long-term investment. In that case, we apply the proxy. The proxy means we will take our market value and we will multiply it by 30%, and the 30% of our market value will be the zakatable amount. So if you had $3,000 of a stock in value, and then you apply the 30% proxy, $1,000 will be zakatable. You will pay 2.5% on this, 2.5% on 1,000, because only 1,000 remains as zakatable. Second, anything that we trade and are invested in, but we trade under 1 year, whether it be a stock or ETF, we do not apply the proxy because these are short-term trades, and we will consider 5% on it. Gold, silver, jewelry. Gold and silver, by default, we pay zakat on. Jewelry that is gold and silver, there's a difference of opinion. According to the Hanafi school of thought, we pay zakat on gold and silver even if it be jewelry. According to the other schools, if it is worn, you do not need to pay on the gold and silver. However, all unanimously agree that you do not pay any zakat on gems and other metals. So whether it be rubies or diamonds of high value or low value, all of these, fake or real, are non-zakatable. When you have gold or silver that is a mixed metal, for example, you have 30% gold, 70% copper, or you have 60% gold and 40% copper. how do we deal with this situation? There are two views. One view is the view of the Hanafi school, and that is that whatever metal you have, as long as 50% or more is zakat or silver, we consider it ghalib. It is completely gold or silver based on the ratio. So if you have 51% or 50% or 60% gold, it is 100% gold, and you pay zakat on 100% of its weight. The second view is that we ratio it in accordance to its amount. So if it is 50% gold and 50% copper, then in that case, if it was $10,000 in value, you're only paying zakat on 5,000, because 50% is only gold. Next is the discussion of land and homes and real estate. First, the general rule is that housing, real estate is exempt from zakat, except the case that I mentioned at the very beginning, which was a property that is on the market for sale for profit, that is not personal. That is not your personal home. In that case, where you are selling a property, maybe you had renovated, maybe you were renting it before, maybe you held it, maybe opportunities came up, and now you are in the intent of selling the property. Now this is a business item, and you will pay zakat on it. And you would pay zakat on any other cash that is saved. Land also, generally undeveloped land, we are not paying zakat on this. And very importantly, anything that is personal is not zakatable. This is a very common question. People ask about their personal homes, their cars. Some people have multiple cars, maybe they have 2 or 3 cars. People have watches that are expensive. All of these that are personal items, even though they have value, they are not zakatable. Lastly, for the sake of ensuring everyone understands mortgages. Mortgages take the same approach of the debts that we talked about before. You can only deduct the principal amount of 1 year's payment, even though it is amortized over the entire 20, 30, 40 years. There is an opinion that if a person feels that they do not need to deduct this, then they should not, because that deduction is quite large and it can easily take a person out of the nisab over a mortgage which a person is paying similar to rent in many cases. In the current month that you are paying your zakat, what can you deduct? See, we talked about debts, we talked about money owed, but here I'm talking about expenses. You cannot deduct expenses or future expenses. There is a distinct difference between a debt and an expense. An expense is something that you are paying as you go, as you utilize, as the time comes. A debt is something where you have already taken that funds and you are indebted to that person. This can be deducted because it is money owed already. In the case of expenses, whether it be rent, whether it be utilities, we do not deduct these. Same way with a lease, same way with a rent in a property or a home that you pay the rent, all of these are non-deductible. The only thing that can be deducted is the expenses of the current month in which you are paying zakat. I repeat, the expenses that you are incurring in the month that you are paying zakat. So a nutshell, a summary of this is that we need to do a few steps. Number one, we need to reach the nisab. Once the nisab is met, we are responsible to pay zakat 1 year later. So if the nisab is reached on Ramadan the 1st this year, then next year Ramadan the 1st I will pay my zakat. Because now I pay zakat hawalan al-hawl. 1 year must pass and I must retain this. It is not just money coming in the account, it has to be retained for 1 year. So the following year, then I gather all of my zakatable assets that we talked about, stocks, cash at hand, money owed to me that I expect to be paid, gold, silver, all of this. I gather the total sum and then I deduct. I can easily deduct my current month's expenses that we just talked about. Then I can deduct my debts, long-term, short-term, and then I have a balance amount. That balance amount brings me to my total zakatable net worth. So it could have started with 100,000 of everything gathered. It could have left me with 50,000. And then the remaining balance, we pay 2.5%, and that is our zakat. As a believer, as a Muslim, we are responsible, and I repeat with complete emphasis, we are responsible to ensure that our zakat reach the recipients. So throughout the month of Ramadan, there are campaigns all across the world. There are many people in need. Ensure that when you pay your zakat, you calculate it correctly and you discharge it the correct way to ensure that the recipients get it, they receive it, and it is dealt with appropriately, and you have also calculated and paid your entire zakat. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. This program was brought to you by Penny Appeal. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all of the members of the organization, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them the ability to assist the ummah in many, many ways, long-term and short-term, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rectify the affairs of all of the ummah. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.